again. This is Vanessa Castler with Love Fire Counseling and Consulting, and today we're going to be on week 2 of our marriage restoration course. So I'm just so excited. I really enjoyed just last week. We had a lot of couples come in and we talked about the marriage satisfaction surveys. If you haven't completed it, I highly recommend you do that. It really helps just to kind of see what are the main struggles in your marriage and how invested you are in the restoration of your marriage, or if you need more discernment counseling and clarity, whether or not this is the way you want to go, or is there reason for divorce? Is there a reason that we need to separate for a season and focus on ourselves? So, in week 1, we're really going over rules of engagement. I'm just going to use my list right here. Rules of engagement, fair fighting techniques, and then we talk about the difficulties of our relationships together and just kind of process through that with each other, like what are the core things that have just been disturbing us the most? And then we set up some goals for our therapy process together, our time together. So week 2 is called Worldview. And you might be questioning, like, why did we stick this into week 2? But I just want to kind of go over this. It's really important for us to know the history of our relationship. And sometimes just talking about what brought us together in the first place. What was our purpose for getting married? What was it like when we were dating? What were we attracted to each other about initially? What values and if we did premarital counseling, what were some of our beliefs, our values, our goals that we had set up at the beginning? In Hebrew culture, they have what's called a ketubah. And it was kind of funny because the father of the bride would meet with the father of the groom, and they would go through and create a contract together and just go back and forth until they came up with an agreement of bridal price, of how many cows he would give for the marriage, or how he would provide for the wife and what she would commit to. And so in our culture today, it's a lot different, and we may not even have family support. So knowing our history and kind of going back in time, and Gottman talks about it in their workbook. It's called 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, which I use some of his stuff as well. I'm Gottman trained. But he talks about what were the things that originally, the love mapping game. If you haven't downloaded the app yet for Gottman, it's Gottman Card Decks, and you can just go to all the different questions. It's really good for date night questions. It's good for sex therapy. Sex questions are all on there. Things you can explore, the mild, medium, hot with salsa. I really like Gottman, and his resources are phenomenal. So, but for this week, we're really talking about the history of the relationship, also past relationships. Because if you know your partner's history with other partners and you're vulnerable and open with that, it can be really insightful to understand why there might be a need for other things. Like maybe your partner is feeling emotionally disconnected from you. So you really need to explore those things in an open, trusted communication lines together and kind of re-explore and revisit some of the things that you probably haven't been able to talk about before. It's really important for week 1 first to establish a safety of communication. Some people take 2 weeks to do week 1, and that's okay too. So if you need additional support, you can always contact us and we can reach out, do individual sessions with you, whatever's needed. We always do an individual session on week 3. But week 2, we're wanting to talk about also any past relations, but any traumatic experiences that you might have had. So some of you may have gone through a rape or child molestation, sexual abuse of some history, and it may be blocking your intimacy with your partner. Even a traumatic breakup of a high school boyfriend. It can also impact how you interact with your spouse, and maybe you need some walls to come down. Maybe there's some individual things that you just haven't processed yet, or in your marriage, your partner may have cheated on you, or you may have reached out to someone else, and it's causing trauma in your partner betrayal trauma we talk about a lot. And so we really need to go over those things this next this next season and talk about what is your view of the world when it comes to marriage, when it comes to your relationship. And so some of the resources that I provide is this relationship clarification questions. And you can take this and do these with your partner. I'm going to read a couple of them today, but how compatible are our lifestyles? This is about beliefs, values, goals. To what extent are we able to be our authentic selves? That's a really good question to ask. How well do we respect each other's differences? There's a section of beliefs, values, goals. There's a section on communication, a section on family and social life, and a section on intimacy. Okay, so all of you guys can have access to these worksheets this week, but it's really good in a romantic relationship to help define the joys and distresses of the relationship. And intimacy, for instance, it says, how often do we express attraction to one another? And so if you come in, we may or may not have done our sex therapy session talk together, but I usually like to analyze and just touch base with you is how often are we having sex? How often are we able to connect emotionally and physically in our relationship? If it's not scheduled and we're just not getting to it, maybe we could schedule a week, like every week at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoons, or at Friday nights from 6 to 9 p.m. Those are set aside for intimacy and connection and reestablishing trust. I really like working under a counselor. His name was Dr. Michael Harden here in Lubbock, Texas. And he was a marriage counselor for like 25 years, and I got to shadow over him when I started. And I was so blessed because he would show us that even the most, it was sex therapy training when I shadowed him, but even the most fitting couples that seem like they would never have problems in that area can struggle with sexual connection or orgasms or, different things for different people because of blockages, or maybe they are struggling with being attracted to one another in this season of life, or their kids is just chaotic. So coming up with a plan and knowing those things, just communicating and talking through can already make a huge difference in letting each other know you prioritize the relationship and the marriage. With communication, I'll just randomly pick one, but it says, how attentively do we listen to each other? And so last week we talked a little bit about active listening if you were in here in person, but instead of facing just the therapist, I really want people to start turning their chairs and facing each other. And so eye-to-eye contact, nodding when your partner is talking, leaning in, silencing your phone, putting them in a basket, having a special place in your house set aside for that one-on-one communication. All of this stuff is going to take time, but reestablishing rules of engagement for each other and making each other priority. Gottman in his book talks about the stress reducing 20 minutes. I know I've mentioned it on another video, but it's really important for you to keep doing that, okay? If you have stopped doing it, I really want you to just think about, okay, how can I do that this week? 10 minutes for your partner out of 24 hours, where you sit and you let them vent on anything that's in their life. It can be on parenting, anything but the relationship at this point, because we really want to focus on same team and not attacking each other at this point. So you're rebuilding a relationship right now. If you've been on the brink of divorce, you're having to kind of reestablish what it would be like to be dating someone again. And you're not going to tell someone you just started dating how upset you are with them and how horrible they are of a dad or a mom, like how they didn't do the dishes. You're not going to do that. You're going to pursue, what are your interests? What are your likes? What was it like as a child? So it's a very big transition away from the attacking character into trying to get to know them for the first time maybe. like they're a whole new, brand new person. There's been a lot that's happened since you first engaged with each other. So that's that on the relationship clarification. That's going to be kind of a homework assignment for this week. And then I also put a date night on there. I have a really cool new worksheet that I'm going to be incorporating, and it's by Fueled by Fire, and it comes from a book called His Needs, Her Needs, and it's 20 things a male can do, 20 things a female can do that will help the other person feel like royalty on your dates. From opening doors to saying thank you and letting the male choose the restaurant, just all kinds of different things that just kind of put up a queenly, kingly vibe for the date night and making it a lot more special. If you don't, Gottman recommends 1 night a week, 1 weekend per month, and 1 week per year solely devoted to your relationship and your partner. And I know that's a lot, but if you can start doing that, even if it's just for 6 weeks, you can try. Just every Friday night, we're going on a date and we're gonna pay a babysitter. You know, even if you just have to get a friend or family member to volunteer for you, or find a church that's doing a date night. Okay, so the third part of week 3 is the overview of the pain and the peace cycles and restorative steps that you can take for your marriage. If you haven't gone over the pain and the peace cycle, it's a very long process. It's from restoration therapy. And I like to go over this in person if I can, but I will go over it with you today. Basically, it's going to be 4 steps. The first step and the second step are all under the umbrella of pain and like what's not good. The third step and the fourth step are under the umbrella of peace. So what you would like to believe about yourself and the behavior you would like to have. So you have the pain cycle and the peace cycle. You can do this individually. Also, you can do it as a group. So I'm going to move my chair and just kind of come up here, and we're going to write some things on the board. So the pain cycle, if I were to kind of break it down for you, it's I feel, right? We're always going to identify the core foundational feelings first. Okay, so I feel is right here. And then I like to tell people to identify your top 3. Okay, and then number 2, I feel, I normally react by. Okay, so in cognitive behavioral therapy, you're trying to identify first the feeling and emotion, right? Because everything starts with this feeling or emotion, and then it leads to a behavior. I'm not sure if you can see this well, but let me scoot you forward. So we're gonna try to identify our feelings and our emotions in both of the cycles, the pain and the peace. But, so if I can, sorry for the reflection on the glass, but I feel unloved. I just randomly pick, they're on the worksheets, you can highlight as many as you want and then just circle your top 3. But I feel unloved, unheard, and unvalued. Or a common one is like disrespected, especially for men. And I normally react by isolating, right? This is just an example. Withdrawing to punish. Here you're going to be really identifying any of the Gottman's 4 things like stonewalling, criticism, scapegoating, blame. And withdrawing, you could put withdrawing to avoid if you feel attacked a lot, or withdrawing to punish if you withdraw when your partner makes you mad. So it just depends on your system, but typically you get into a negative neural network that flows from a negative feeling or belief into a negative behavior. And so what we're going to try to do is we're going to move from the negative side of the peace cycle to a cycle or pain cycle into a side of peace. I'm going to take you to the other side. Okay, so on this side, we're going to kind of try to just a minute, make it a little bit easier. to get out of our pain cycle by using a question. And our question that you can ask your spouse if you really want to know if they are in their peace cycle. Sorry, this board gets kind of messy. Is going to be, are you in your truth? Okay? So you can ask your partner this like code word, are you in your truth? My husband does this all the time with me, and it is so helpful. Are you in your truth? If a partner asks that, you kind of make a policy up front that you're not going to be offended if your partner says, are you in your truth? Okay? So step 3 is I am. Okay? So your I am statement is going to be, your I am statement is going to be really essential when you're trying to identify core attributes, right? So I am, sometimes you just have to get with God and ask him what he thinks about you. So I am servant-hearted, okay? It's just something that you know about yourself to be true. It doesn't have to be on the list. It can be, I am safe, I am loved, I am servant-hearted, I am worthy, significant, peaceful, secure, calm, known, successful, dedicated. There's all these different things. I'm going to put desirable, okay? And even if your partner isn't treating you like that, if you know that this is an attribute that you hold, then it can be a lot easier because you're telling yourself the truth about you. The truth about me is, actually, before I am, let's add in the truth about me is. I am loved, servant-hearted, desirable, okay? And then step 4, therefore I will, okay? This is your opposite reaction, okay? Instead of doing what you always do, over here, isolating, withdrawing to punish, and blaming, you're gonna move to the peace cycle, and you're gonna find, a lot of times it helps just to get on the sheet and read some better coping mechanisms if you're not used to doing this. But one of the things that I like is like, I'm gonna build up, okay? Oh, that's better. Can you see that better? I changed the way I was writing. I'm gonna be stable. And I love this one. I'm gonna stay sane, okay? So the research shows that even just saying what you will do will increase your likelihood of doing it every time. So let's look over this again. We have 4 steps in the pain cycle. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna identify yours, take a highlighter, do it, and you can do this every day. When we went to a marriage intensive, it was like a 4-day, 5-star, bed and breakfast type facility. It was so awesome. I'd love to host them someday. But they taught us this in a way that really helps because they said do it 3 times a day for 30 days. No one can do that, especially if you work. But if you can do it by yourself first and just really get in the habit, what you're doing is you're shifting a neural network from a negative belief system and behavior to a positive. It's a cognitive behavioral therapy 101. Right, so I feel, you're going to sit, face your partner, and you're going to say this out loud. Your partner is just going to face you, active listening, nod their head. They're not going to add or take away from what you say. They're not going to give a lot of comments even. It's really important because otherwise it's like it becomes an argument, right? And we don't want that. And we never say like, you make me feel, or you use I statements like, I feel this way. Just basic, right? Communication. So I feel unloved, unheard, unvalued. I normally react by isolating, withdrawing to punish, blaming. But the truth about me is I am loved, servant-hearted, and desirable. Therefore, I will build up, be stable, and stay sane. And then take a breath. And the partner just says, thanks for sharing. That's awesome. And then they do theirs. And you can keep this kind of set up in your closet. A lot of people put it on these white papers and just stick it in their closet. or you can put a dry erase board in your closet, and anytime you get triggered, you can go and just use this as a tool of de-escalation, debriefing, and it can be really helpful. I also have a digital version that you can put on your phone. So if you need it like at work, say you're texting your spouse. And I wanted to add in, this came up with a couple this week. Communication via text message is very, very inaccurate typically, because you're not getting the full spectrum of what your partner is saying. You're missing out face to face, you're missing out any kind of body language, any tone of voice, right? They say the accuracy in text messaging is like percentage, I think it was like 85% less effective communication than if you're talking face to face, voice to voice. And so keep that in mind this week as you're communicating, to try to eliminate and decrease the amount of time you're spending texting each other, unless it's just positive, encouraging text throughout the day, scriptures, or, something like, even if you send videos to your partner, maybe not political things or things that they won't agree with, that will just be triggering to them, because they can be so easily miscommunicated throughout the day. Okay, so I hope that's helpful for this week. So your homework is to do the daily four-step and continue doing that stress-relieving conversation. So you can do your stress-relieving conversation after you've done the four-step. You can do it anytime you're triggered. You can practice it when you're not triggered, which actually is more effective. But that's what you're going to use when it's about the relationship, okay? So use the four-step if it's about the relationship. Use the stress-relieving venting if it's about something else other than your partner, okay? And then the other part of homework I had already said, but it's the date night with the clarification questions. And then if you would like that additional resource of what it looks like to be a queen and a king on a date, I can send you that as well. Okay, thank you so much, and you guys have a great rest of your week. Until I see you again, love and blessings from Love Fire Counseling.